Hey guys, it's John from Archive Tactics. Today we're bringing you guys another video. This time it's going to be my deck profile of Tonoris. So let's get right into it. Okay, starting off. So for my spirit, I use Spirit of Fire. I use this one mainly because I feel like this, in my preference, is the best spirit to use at the current moment. I'm not really a big fan of the MRC spirit. The token is nice, but to me, it's like I'd rather have the 7 draws at the start, especially since Tonoris doesn't really have much draw power, especially when you're playing the fire version. Next we have Tonoris Low Mercenary, or level 1. So for this one, he just has taunt, but in this deck, we're not really having anything for him to really taunt except for Academy Guide, if you want to make sure Academy Guide doesn't die for a turn. Then we have the level 2. The level 2 has the on enter, you gain +3 to your next attack. So in some situations, we might stay on level 1 if we want to get the +3 to help clear the board off. But if not, depending on what our hand is, sometimes we'll go to level 2 and try to skip the ability just so we can get to 3 as fast as we can. Finally, this is our level 3 Tonoris Genesis Aegis. So with this one, at the beginning of Recollection, he gets to create 3 domains. For the first domain that we have Obelisk of Protection. So this is part of their domain series for Tonoris. All 3 of them will have this effect, whereas whenever you activate their abilities, it costs 1 less for every domain that you have. So right now, potentially it is at 4, but when it's already on the field, it'll count as 3, since it does count itself. So this one, whenever it's tapped, you can prevent 2 damage. The next one we have is Obelisk of Armament. So this one is for 5, and when you tap this one, you do end up making a sword, which is another token. This sword is a 3/1, which honestly is not that bad, especially since it guarantees that you get to at least attack every turn. And then finally, for our last domain, we have Obelisk of Fabrication. So this is going to be their heaviest activation, which is at 6. And if you don't have any other domains, by the time you get to this one, it'll cost roughly around 3 if you summon the other 2 beforehand. And this one is tap 1, you get to make a automaton drones with a buff counter. So automaton drones, they are 1/1s, so this will make them 2/2s. Cool, so that's everything we have for our champion. Next is going to be the actual material. So we're going to have 1 Grand Crusader ring. Obviously, banish this, draw 1 card. You pretty much want to run it in most decks. It's like the best regalia item that you can run. We also have Wayfinder map. So Wayfinder map, it's a really cool card. It makes every domains that you play from hand cost 1 less to activate. And then if you have 3 domains, you can banish it to also draw a card. So this is pretty cool because this is also basically another Crusader ring in our deck. If we have all the domains that we want on the field already, we can just enter this, pop it to get a free card if we don't need the activation effect. Next, I have Oriental Greatsword. I do use this one over Bulwark Sword, and my only reason why is because for this deck, I prefer to have my hand reserved for the cards that I'm trying to set up for my next turn, rather than trying to pay the 2 to have the extra damage for attack. Plus, if I do have the ally on the field, it does give them a little buff as well. And this mainly can be just used for if in case I want to hit a little bit extra damage for Tonoris. Level 2. Here we also have Orbit Hubris. Orbit Hubris is pretty cool because this is our mulligan cards. we can draw 3 cards, or up to 3 cards, and then for whatever card we drew from our hand, we can choose any cards equal to that number and then put it back into the deck shuffled. We mainly use this in case that we don't really have our win con, which is going to be Assemble the Ancients, and I'll go over more over that card a little bit later. We play Safeguard Amulet. This is pretty much for any type of matchup that we have against fire elements, or for against caster decks like Rye or Merlin. We do also play Tarf Ring. Tarf Ring is good for against any type of deck that likes to go wide, and we're just trying to like stall a little bit extra just to get our turn set. For the advanced elements that we are running, we're going to be running Anchor Broadsword. So this is pretty much our game finisher card. For when you swing with this card, you have to pay 2 in order to use it. But the plus side about it is that when it does swing, it gets +1 strength for every token you control. So at the end of the game, pretty much is like this is going to typically swing about 8 to 10 damage every time, and that's going to be enough to make your opponent cry. And then finally, what we have, which is what I think is the best Neos card that we have in the material, is going to be the Scripture. So the Scripture at the beginning of your end phase, if you control 4 or more tokens, which you're going to get it by the time this comes out on the field, you're going to have 4 tokens. You get to draw a card into your memory, which is pretty nice. It's a nice draw a nice additional draw that you'll get at the end of your turn to help set up for the next turn. Okay guys, let's get right into the main deck. For the first card that I'm going to show, it's going to be Resolution Stand. I do run 4 copies of this card. The effect of this card is I can target 1 unit, whether you're champion or ally, and if this card would be dealt attack damage or combat damage for that turn, you prevent 3 of that damage. The reason why I run this card is because since a lot of decks in Grand Archetype are mostly combat focused, I prefer to have this card over non-combat spells, because chances are I'm probably going to end up using this a lot more than I am for the non-combat cards. The other thing about it that I also do like is that the level 2 effect for it is that you can activate this card without paying the reserve cost. If you do skip your next draw step. This could also be a really good, nice lifesaver, because if you're going against Diana, if she does have a Bauble on play, if she does try to pop it on Recollection, in response, you can just use this level 2 effect and then stop you from drawing your draw during your turn. The next card we're going to show is going to be Fortified Mana Shield. So I do run this card at 2. Fortified Mana Shield, what it does is that I can target a unit and I can reduce the non-combat damage that will be dealt by 4. And it has the class bonus, which this card costs 2 less if my champion is taunt. So at level 1, your champion Tonoris is going to have taunt because of the on placement effect. So this card is free if you're playing against a non-combat deck. It's also really nice because if you have Academy Guide on the field, for example, and Rye tries to pop it early, you can use this to protect Academy Guide for a turn for free. We're going to go into some of the floating memories that I do run. I play 4 Idle Thoughts. I don't really have to really say much about this card. It's a floating memory. You get to look at the top 4, pretty much help you try to get some of the cards that you want on top and trying to just pretty much find. Next we have Navigate the Street. In my opinion, this is honestly a really great card. So this card, it's for 1 cost. It has the Glimpse ability 1+X, where X is the amount of domains that you control. So early game, it's not too bad because you can typically get this for a Glimpse 1, Glimpse 2, turn 1, and it's a floating memory, so perfect to go to the next level. But late game, I typically end up getting this to get to Glimpse 6, Glimpse 8, sometimes even Glimpse 10. So just having that much power to just alter your deck helps so much. We run 3 Savage Smash. Savage Smash is a attack card that does have floating memory if you have the class bonus Guardian. It's a 4-cost attack and it does deal 4 damage. So if you play this when you get to level 2, you can smack someone for 7, which is a good healthy amount. I have 2 Martial Guards that I run. This card prevents 2 damage that would be dealt to a unit. Rather, it's combat or non-combat is the reason why I run it. And then it has the class bonus level 2 for Guardian. It also is a floating memory, which can be nice. Trying to get to level 3. Finally, we have our last card, which is going to be Academy Guide. It's not a floating memory, but it basically acts like one. Academy Guide has the ability that your champions material cost 1 less to materialize. It's really great if you can get it out as soon as possible turn 1, because that way you can just level up. So the main thing that I have an issue with Tonoris is that he does have some draw issues, so this does help because the longer you have it on the field, you basically means that's 1 less card that you have to discard. So if you have it from level 0 and get it up and keep it until you get to level 3, that's basically a free 3 cards in hand that you never got to discard from the banishing of leveling up. We're going to start hitting our fire cards. I do run 3 Flame Sweep. So Flame Sweep has the cleave effect, which is when the unit attacks, it gets to attack all of your opponent's units. This is really good because if you're playing against decks that had stealth, there isn't a really way for us to target it playing as Guardian. So we do have to steal this card from Warrior, so we don't get to have that class bonus effect. Typically, because this does hit for 1 damage, you kind of have to time it up to where you can do it on level 2, so you can make this hit for 4. And that's enough to kill pretty much most allies, since you don't really see much allies having more than 4 health. Next we have Creative Shock. We run Creative Shock as a 3 of. This is basically just a hand filter, so we can ignore the class bonus. The main effect is just draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Reason why we run this is that this is going to be helping us to find our win cons in our deck and to help fix our hands in case the hand isn't ideal. This next card is my favorite card. It's the card that I love the most of this deck. When I first saw this card, I knew that this was going to be perfect for this deck, and it actually it performs a lot. It's going to be Airship Captain. I run this as a 4 of. It is a 2-cost 1/3 ally that has the ability whenever a domain enters the field under your control, deal 2 damage to target champion. This card puts in the work. I cannot say that enough. There has been so many games where I won just by having just Airship Captain burning my opponents. And for some reason, a lot of people, they don't really see Airship Captain as a threat, so they kind of just leave him on the field. And then eventually it's like, you play 1 domain, deals 2. Play your second domain, that's 4 damage that 1 Airship Captain did. If you go to level 3, if they let you get all 3 domains and keeping this Airship Captain, that's an additional 6 damage that he already dealt just for just existing. So definitely my most favorite card in the deck. It's like pretty much like our second win con outlet, because you would literally just win games just by burning them by having Airship Captain. And it's also pretty funny because they'll end up start ignoring your champion just to take this guy out once they realize how strong of a card this guy is. Now we're going to start hitting our domains. I run 4 Concourse. So Concourse is a 2-cost domain. At the beginning of your recollection, you get to glimpse 1. pretty nice to help us filter that next draw, make sure it's the card that we actually want to keep, and if not, send it to the bottom. We also run 3 Sanctum Truth. So with the Sanctum, whenever your champion levels up, you may put 2 cards from your hand or memory on the bottom of your deck and draw 2 cards. This is just another filter outlet that we have in the deck to help us get that win con. And I know I've been saying win con a lot, so I'm going to go over, once we get to advanced element, what that win con actually is. Now, this domain is my favorite domain that we got from MRC. It is Hub of Innovation. So it's a 3-cost domain. When enter, this you to draw a card into your memory. So like I said, in Tonoris, we do not have a lot of draw outlets. So just getting a domain that helps us draw is amazing. This is my favorite card that we could have honestly asked for from MRC. I pretty much run this card in like every Tonoris deck that I do have because it's just that much of a great card to run. For the final domain that we have Gloamspire Black Market. So Gloamspire Black Market, it is it's very niche. So it's not a bad card because it does allow us to draw. The only issue is that it does allow your opponent to also draw if they do have influence less than 7. So typically you try not to give your opponent to draw, but if you're desperate into the hand size and you're still trying to dig for your win con, this is something that you're just gonna have to like deal with and just hope that you can get the pieces so you can stop having your opponent draw an extra card. Now we're going to start getting into our advanced element. So I run 3 Neophyte. It's free cost card. You draw a card if you have 8 or more objects. So just remember that objects are pretty much anything that is permanently on your board, and you get to draw a card into memory if you have 8. So most of the time we are going to have 8, so this does end up making us draw 2 cards every time we do use it, and if we have to, we can get just to draw 1 just to find something else. I run 4 Summon Sentinels. This card is crazy. It is a 4-cost card. It has the ability that this card costs 1 less to activate for each domain you control. Every time that I play this card, I rarely pay for the actual 4. I pretty much will always either get it for free or I'll only pay 1. And when we do pay, we'll get 2 automatons that both will get buff counters. So two twos, meaning 4 damage that you can just throw at your opponent. Next, I do run 2 Provokes. So Provokes, it has the ability that you can choose up to 5 target objects, and when you do choose these 5 target objects, you can give them Spell Shroud, and you can prevent 2 damage that would be dealt to each of these targets. It also has the class bonus effects that whenever you do activate this card, if you do decide to choose 1 card, example, let's just say if your opponent casts a spell, a non-combat spell, and you don't want to get hit, you can just use this to target your champion only, and then this will allow you to draw into your memory. For the last card of our main deck, we have our Win Con. This is the card that we pretty much will make your opponent pee their pants every time they see it. It is just, to me, the funniest thing that you can just play on your opponent. We have a Symbol of the Ancients. I run this as a 4 of just to make sure that we can try to get this card into our hand as soon as possible. So this card has the effect that you sacrifice any numbers of domains, then summon a automaton drone token. Then those tokens will enter rested with a buff counter on it equal to the amount of domains sacrificed. They also get vigor until the end of turn. So this card is just insane. If you get up to 5 domains, actually no, if you get up to 4 domains, you can activate this card, sacrifice your 4 domains, you summon 4 automatons tapped, and they get 4 buff count, which means these are 5/5s. You get 4 5/5s, right? And that's going to hit for 20 damage, which at most point, by the time you get to that point, you're pretty much just going to kill them with automatons, right? If you get 5 of them, then that's 5/5 or 5/6/6, which that's pretty much going to kill anyone. So this is our main threat of the game. The only con about this card is that the automatons do enter tap, so we do have to wait for 1 extra turn. But if your opponent doesn't have an answer to respond to this, that next turn you're just going to millywalk them with the amount of brute force. Not to mention that if you also pair this with Anchor Blade as well, so your champion can also get a +1 on that sword for every automaton that you made, they're most likely not going to make it to that next turn. Alright, let's get into this sideboard. So I do run Stalwart Shieldmate. I have her at 4. I kept her inside the sideboard. I didn't really see her as a main card that I want to run inside of my main deck, but I kept her on the sideboard just in case if I do go against a deck that is very aggressive early game and I need some little help to kind of prevent them from pushing me too early. I also run 2 more copies of Martial Guard. So I have these cards in case we go against caster decks. If we do go against caster deck, Resolution Stand doesn't really do anything for us, so we do want more ways to stop non-combat damage. Speaking of non-combat damage, that then leads us into 4 or 5 Mana Shield as well. Same thing as the reason why we're running Martial Guard. These 2 will then also replace the last 2 Resolution Stand that are inside of your deck. We also run a Heat Wave Generator. So this card is in our decks just in case if you want to be a little bit more aggressive. So this card costs 1 less as long as you're playing Guardian. So it's a free fire material card. This card has, at the beginning of your recollection, you can choose an ally. It gets 1 strength. So this just puts a little bit more pressure on your opponent just because you're going to have something deal 1 extra damage. So allowing you to push them more and more towards the edge. And then our final card for our deck profile is going to be Proclamation. Proclamation has the on-enter draw for 1 cost. This card basically prevents players from drawing more than 3 cards each turn unless it is their first turn of the game. So reason why we do run this is mainly because of Rai, because I will be honest, Rai draws a lot. He draws an unhealthy amount of cards, and I'm honestly tired of like playing my turns where I draw 1 to 2 cards a turn, and my man Rai is drawing 5 to 10 cards in a single turn. So we have this just to make sure that like they can have a bad day, and especially try to stop them from finding answers to our board, because the one thing that will suck about going against Rai is if they play Peaceful Union, because that's going to be another turn that will stall our automatons. But still, if they can't one-shot you at that next turn, then they're just cooked. So and that's going to be it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. We're probably going to be doing a video later on about us doing our first games. So you'll probably get a chance to see this deck actually perform in the next video. So other than that, bye.